All right, everybody. Um, we have, okay, there we go. We had some really weird technical stuff going on there for a second, but we are live, and this is the Be the Boss show. It's Tuesday night, and I am Stephanie Pazniokis. Welcome to tonight's live session, and I'm so glad you're here because tonight we're talking about cravings and snacking and hunger, and I'll be giving you actionable tools to help you take control of your cravings without feeling deprived or stressed out about it, which is kind of really the most important aspect of it, right? Um, you want to be the boss. That's what we're here to be. So if you guys are joining me live, feel free to let me just get over to my group over here. Comment and say hi. Let me know you're here. Um, and I know a number of you said you were going to be joining me. So hopefully you can just let me know when you're here live. And Mary is here. All right. So this is step one of being the boss of your weight, right? If you've ever fallen out of control or felt out of control when it comes to cravings or mindless eating or stress-driven snacking, you are not alone. Um, you're not. We've every single person on the planet has had to deal with this issue for lots of reasons, and I'm going to go into them today. We're going to dive into those triggers and how we can start building better habits around them and outsmarting them. Plus, I'm sharing some powerful insights on how your brain and stress and hormones can all mess with your hunger cues and get really confusing. So I want you to stick around till the end because I do have a little something for you at the end that I want to give you. It's something you can print out to help remind you of everything we talked about today and some recipes in there too. Steph is here. Awesome. So basically, I want to just dive right in because I try to keep these at about 20-25 minutes at tops. I don't want to totally clog your brain too much on a Tuesday night. But the first thing I want to talk about is just the power of your brain and automated eating, right? So what is a little bit of science here? So first of all, your brain is amazing. It uses a huge amount of energy, though. It uses a fifth of all of the energy of your body, 20%. When you're sleeping, it goes down to 18. When you're working really hard and thinking the hardest thinking you think you stuff you could ever think, it's only at 21%. So we just are, it's just on, right? And because it uses a lot of energy, it automates a lot of things in the background. I mean, imagine if you had to think about making sure your heart beat or that you breathed or all of that sort of thing. Um, if you had to think about how to move your leg, if you had to think about if you imagine driving a car, if you always had to think about every single aspect of driving a car. So automation is a lifesaver, but it's also, as much as it's a superpower, it's a kryptonite. So we're going to try to get that superpower part of it out, and fired up for tonight. Because over thousands of years, we have adapted for survival and to associate certain behaviors with that survival, like eating when we're stressed or tired. And there's a reason for that. But often we're eating for reasons that are not related to true hunger. And we're also not in true danger most of the time. For example, stress and cortisol, right? So stress um, increases our cortisol levels. Cortisol is one of the stress hormones, one of the hormones involved in the fight or flight or stress response. We also have adrenaline, and that's the one that affects our heart rate and our breath rate and all of that to get our blood pumping. But cortisol is the reason why we want the blood pumping because it is going to the liver and saying, make all of that emergency access fuel available right now. Get all that sugar into the blood. We got to pump it to the muscles and run from the bear, right? So the thing is that once those cortisol levels are activated, it not only it does trigger our cravings, because it is signaling our brain to seek quick sources of energy. We're going to use that running from the bear glucose sugar pretty quick, and it's telling us, hey, you need to refill those reserves. You need to eat some fast energy, and then cravings can come in. And that's specifically why you might crave sugary or high carb foods during those stressful times. Another one, and again, keep in mind, if you guys see my emails, you'll notice that I talked about hormones this week, and that has a lot to do with this. Lack of sleep. And if we don't sleep enough, we are actually disrupting our hunger hormones. Ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, increases, so we get more hungry. But leptin, which is one of the master satiety hormones, that signals the desire to eat higher up in our brain, is decreased. That's, important for telling you you're not interested in eating. And that makes it easier to reach for snacks. Even if you're not physically hungry, you just feel like a little noshy all day. You're just like, I want to eat. Um, so it's really important to get good rest because that time when you're sleeping, you're dropping the cortisol. Your body's processing cortisol and getting rid of that. It is resetting your brain's neurotransmitters and the hormone levels in your body, like leptin and ghrelin, and it. So it's really important what happens when we sleep. And then, of course, there's also just simple nutrient deficiency or blood sugar fluctuation. So skipping meals, say you have a breakfast, then you skip all the way till dinner, and you've started the whole process during the day, and you're moving around. You've broken your fast, and then you've got this whole big, huge time in between. Your body just may not have the nutrients it needs to do all the things you're asking it to do during the day. Um, Maybe you had a high glycemic food. That's a food that impacts your blood sugar by causing it to go up rapidly. We'll talk a little bit about that. But if you eat that earlier in the day and your blood sugar spikes and then crashes, goes way down, that will make you feel like you need something to pick you up. And you do. Your brain, because if you go below a certain threshold, your brain sees that as an emergency. It triggers cortisol to release more sugar into your blood to bring that back up. Because remember, I said your brain was an energy hog. So I want you to make sure you guys are asking questions too, if you have any. Hey, Terry. I'm going to try to look over every so often. So if you've got a question, chime in. Um, all right. So your brain's an energy hog. You've had high sugar. It dips down below its threshold. Your brain sends mayday signals, and now you've got a craving, right? So that's why you may crave snacks when your blood sugar is low. Your brain needs that quick fix. So now we have the next one, which is dehydration. Speaking of, wet and why whistle, have some water. Sometimes our body signals hunger, but it's actually just dehydration. I mean, your brain can't exactly tell you this is the thing you need. I mean, there are some differences between dehydration and hunger, but we don't always recognize it if we're not aware of it. Um, so it can be mistaken for hunger, and staying hydrated, therefore, is really key to reducing cravings and the drive for food. So if you're ever unsure, this is an actionable tip number one. I'm going to have a number of what I call actionable tips through this, okay, that I've made note for myself to remember to tell you. Actionable tip. If you're ever unsure, if you're really hungry, ask yourself, when did I last eat? Am I really hungry? Is something else triggering this? Could I be thirsty? And then have some water, right? We'll talk about that again. But those are the four main physiological reasons that you may be feeling like you need to eat suddenly: dehydration, nutrient deficiency, or a blood sugar fluctuation, a lack of sleep, and higher stress. Okay. Those all create physiological requirements in your body. So Larry's asking if water replaces food. What I'm saying is, if the cause of your hunger or craving in that moment is actually dehydration, um, when you drink water and you have, and I'll get to the specifics of this in just a few minutes because I know it's in my notes again to talk about, just to drive it home a little bit more. But if you drink an 8-ounce glass of water and you sip at it, or you have some nice hot herbal tea and you're sipping at that, and you have that and you wait 10 minutes and allow it to hydrate your body, and you're still hungry or you still feel the need to eat, then it wasn't hydration. If you've already had 2 liters of water the day and you know it's not hydration, then that's not your go-to. But check in with yourself, and say, wait, Have I really had anything to drink today? Especially this time of year, it's dry in our houses in the New England area or where it's cold. Anybody where it's cold and they have dry heat on, you're going to dehydrate more quickly than you're used to. Um, so now those are the physiological reasons for craving. Um, Now we have emotional and habitual cravings as well. So eating on autopilot is like, oh, we're eating because it's time to eat. I eat at this time, and at that time. Not necessarily because we're actually hungry, but it could be because our body is going to get used to eating at certain times. And if we're eating a similar amount of food every time and we're paying attention, our body's going to naturally get hungry and we're in a, and we know, then you could actually be hungry. But sometimes without thinking, you just reach for the food without out of habit and you're not really hungry. For example, if you normally have a lighter breakfast and then one day you have a heavy breakfast, an three-egg omelet with all kinds of veggies in it and some whole grain toast and you know some chicken sausage, whatever it is that you like to eat, like you have a big breakfast, and then you go to eat again for 2 hours later because you're normally hungry at that point and you have a snack and you just pull it out and start eating it even though you're not needing it, you're not hungry. So that's more of a habitual one where you've just got a time and you're not really basing it on whether you're actually hungry. Um, or the autopilot or habitual thing is that, you know, you've got a stressful morning or a stressful day or you've had a long day and you know, when you get down when you know that in your mind every time you sit down and relax you have food, then that is, you know, in eating on autopilot. It's just a thing you do in a certain context. I come home and I make this and I sit down with a, I don't know, whatever. Some people it might be a glass of wine or a beer or, you know, a water or a soda or a cup, whatever. I don't know, whatever. So you're in a habit. I grab this and I sit down and then I relax. So if that's part of your habitual routine after a long day, when things finally stop, I had somebody tell me in the Facebook group, you know, I put down my kids for napping and now it's me time when I don't have to, you know, sit there and deal with the, oh, mom, what are you eating? Can I have some? Can I have some? Can I have some? Can I have some? And you get to eat in peace and it's not something you want to share with them, then you know, you might be like, ooh, I want to go after that. So that's one you know, type of time we crave or we have an automatic pilot. Um, so what can you do here? An actionable tip number two, next time you're eating out of habit, like try to recognize it. The most important thing is becoming behaviorally aware and understanding what your triggers are. And those times, if you're all here and you're interested in like, you know, how do I get ahead of cravings? One of the most important things to do is recognize when they happen to you. What is the circumstance that are happening? What did you have earlier that day? Was it a high stress day? Was it a low food day? Was I was, you know, eating like a bird and teasing my body, but without ever giving it enough. And it's finally going, oh my gosh, feed me, Seymour. So just really when you think you're about to eat out of habit or just because you're in a certain context, pause for 30 seconds and ask yourself, am I really hungry? And again, going back to the other one, am I thirsty? Have some water? Or is this an emotional craving? And a craving is a little stronger than just hunger, right? It's that desire for something really specific and it's very urgent. So we can usually do something in that place to um, do for a pattern interrupt. Maybe you smell some essential oil, or you get outside and take a walk, or you do something to take you out of that context of that craving. Larry says unsatisfying meal gets you hungry an hour later. Um, are you hungry or just digested fast? Honestly, if you had an unsatisfying meal and you get hungry an hour later, then chances are you A, didn't eat enough and your body is still trying to, you know, it's got all of the machinery. I mean, if you don't eat enough food, it's like telling the factory floor workers to turn the assembly, you know, turn the big manufacturing assembly line back on for 2 boxes. Our body goes through a lot of effort to get all of our digestive processes turned on. We've got a whole cascade of hormones that are all supposed to act in a certain way, and then we tease it. Or we have something that is high glycemic and we tease it and then we get a crash. And yes, an hour later is usually a sugar crash from having something that had too many carbohydrates that spiked your blood sugar too fast. It wasn't a balanced, nutrient dense meal, which I'm going to talk about in just a second when we get to how to set yourself up to combat these stinking cravings. Okay. So we're going to go back to all of the things that we just said are the things that happened that caused them in the first place. We're going to step through those and say, okay, well, what can we do then to keep this from happening? So that's where we're at now. So Larry, pay attention to this part, and you may find that you can have a more satisfying meal and not get hungry an hour later. So the very first thing for everybody, and if this is you, you know it, is getting better sleep, right? Um, Surely all of you have been around long enough or have joined the Facebook group and had the opportunity to get my sleep tips or have gotten the whole sleep guide in email or had a metabolic health audit with me and we talked about your sleep. So if you're somebody who really needs to sleep better, and you don't have any of my resources, then you need to DM me or comment that you need the sleep resource. And then you need to print it and you need to start putting that into practice. Because this one is really, really powerful. Better sleep leads to better appetite regulation because of our endocannabinoid system in the brain, which gets all out of whack when we don't sleep well. And a lot of other things happen during sleep that when we don't get it, influence our metabolism and everything across the board. So aim for a consistent bedtime routine that works for you. The more rested you are, the less likely you are to cave to those cravings throughout the day and just have that general feeling like you want to eat. The second thing is eating real food, right? When I talk about unsatisfying or undernutrient, maybe you have a really healthy snack and you had this tiny little really healthy snack to hold you over and your brain is going, what the heck are you doing? There's nothing in there for me. I just turned off all this stuff on this stuff, used all this energy for what? Eat. You need to eat. So, eat real food. When you do eat, focus on nutrient dense meals. Okay. Make it substantial. If you're truly hungry, make it substantial. And when I say nutrient dense meals, what does that mean? It means you have a lot of nutrients per calorie, right? So fats and carbohydrates, the starchy carbohydrates, the high glycemic those are all energy sources. Your nutrition sources are protein and vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, and some healthy fats because we absolutely require them for our brain function, eye function, skin, everything, hormones. You have to have fats. But these are the building blocks for your body, and our brain is wired to recognize them and say, oh, yep, I got what I needed. Okay, I'm going to hit the full button now. We're done. These will keep you satisfied longer because your brain got everything it needed. Its grocery list got checked off before if you're eating a nutrient poor food that has a lot of energy, right? A lot of just stuff, energy, then we're going to have to eat more to get all of the nutrients. And then we end up eating too much energy and we have to store it somewhere. And guess what? It gets stored. It gets stored as fat, right? So we want to make sure we're focusing on proteins and vegetables first and avoiding the processed foods that trigger blood sugar crashes. Okay. And so the other part of this is really mindful eating, right? Real food, whole foods actually take more effort to chew and digest. And so what usually we do eat them slower, but if you're not paying attention to what you're doing and you're distracted, I mean, how many of us eat in less than 10 minutes? Our brains need more time than that with our food to really be able to send the signal. And when they hit that I'm full button, to get the data up from the office workers, everything has to go up to the brain and then it has to send everything out. It just requires time. So eating slowly and chewing your food thoroughly and dare I say, just sit there and enjoy it, savor it. I'm a foodie, man. I want to like my food. I don't want it to just inhale it and then miss, you know, the beautiful taste of it. Real food takes longer to digest. So this is also really great to do when you intentionally choose to have a treat or snack. So let's just say you decide to have a treat or a snack, or something, close to when you're eating. I like to have my desserts right after dinner if I'm going to have one. I like to have a snack. If I decide I need a snack, then I'm just going to have a lunch. Like I'm going to make it a meal. Um, but if you decide to have something that you wouldn't normally have it intentionally, eat it slowly, and chew it thoroughly. Because how often have you grabbed a box of crackers or a bag of popcorn or chips or cookies and sat down in front of the TV while your hand kept bringing your food to your mouth, and you just sort of mindlessly wolfed it down and looked down and said, "Oh my gosh, who ate all the cookies?" As there are crumbs, littering your lap. So I don't know about you, but when that happens, I am not eating one serving, right? It is so easy to way overeat for our actual energy needs when this happens, when we allow that to happen, which is probably why you guys are all sitting here hanging out with me tonight. Um, so let's just make sure I'm not missing any comments. Okay. So if we practice mindful eating, we can keep this train from derailing. Okay. So first, um, we want to choose what you're going to have, right? I'm going to eat X. Take one or a serving or one serving or less out of the bag, put it on a plate or in a bowl, and put the container away and walk away to another room. Then see how long you can make that treat last. I have been known to make a kernel of popcorn, take 3 to 4 bites, like a popped popcorn, and I'll take a bite. My husband's looking at me like, "Are you a squirrel? Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm eating my popcorn very slowly." And I'm enjoying it. Every time I get a grain of salt, I'm like, "Ooh, ooh, yes. Bring that on." All right. So, um, let's see. I just get all these comments in here. I don't know if I'm seeing them all. All right. So meal planning, portion control. Okay. So we kind of touched on portion control with the snack. If you decide to have it, that mindful eating, that intentional eating, slowly chewing your food, making it last. Try to see if you can stretch it. If you eat in 5 minutes, stretch it to 10. If you eat in 10, stretch it to 15. Try to get yourself to 20. Put the fork down in between bites. Um, enjoy your food. If you're eating with someone, have a little conversation there. All right. So meal planning and portion control, like I said, I've got like my little notes here. So I mentioned this earlier when I was answering Larry. Lead with protein and veggies first in your meal, then include the healthy fats and carbohydrates, starchy carbohydrates if needed. And the balance of these nutrients, when done like this, helps you stay satisfied and you're less likely to snack later. So this is what this looks like, your actionable tip. Next time you prepare a meal, make sure you're thinking to yourself, what is your protein and veggie? Have those first. If you feel satisfied after that, you've done your job. A lot of times we'll put a little bit of, oil or butter or cook and we'll saute in oil or something. There's usually a little bit of fat in our food already, or if our protein may have some fat in it, so we may not need anything else. Um, but studies have showed that post-meal blood sugar, that sugar spike that I've told you about, is much lower and not a spike at all when carbohydrates are eaten last. All right. That means that if you're at a restaurant, absolutely don't eat that bread first. Okay. Try this. Ask them to bring the bread appetizer after the meal as a dessert. I've done that. The other thing I do when I'm eating out is I look at the entrees, and if it's served with white carbs like rice or potato or pasta, I just ask them to sub the carb out for an extra side of veggies. I'm like, I don't want the potatoes. Can I have extra veggies? Or can I have the asparagus? Or I saw that you have sauteed spinach on the marsala. Can I have it with this in it, along with the side salad that comes with the meal, right? So I'll often have like double the veggies plus the protein, and then I can, I'll have make the bread at the end or something. Um, you know, and I've never had a restaurant have a problem with that, but you can do the same thing at home. You're in even more control over it. So, where does fruit come in with the meal planning? That's a great question. Um, Oh, I've got a couple of really great questions here. Okay. So Steph goes, where does the fruit come in with meal planning? Last, I do like to have the fruit last, but in the mornings you're a bit more metabolically active. So if you're mixing it with your yogurt and I like to have a grain-free granola that I make that I like to toss on if I'm doing that. But if I'm having like eggs and whatnot, then I have the fruit last. So I will have that last. Now the nice thing is I if you're eating berries or a high fiber fruit, and a lower sugar fruit, and then you're having it with that other stuff first, you're in a really good place. And so that's one thing. And then Diane is asking, can you have dessert later, not right after a meal? It's really better to do it right after a meal for a couple of reasons. Um, I actually might even mention this in a minute, but I'll mention it here too, is that you're already have gotten eaten. You should be near full. You want to eat until you're just satisfied. You don't want to eat till you're overly full. So if you eat nice and slowly and mindfully, you can actually get the satiety signal, and if you're not done on with what's on your plate, you can stop. You can wait, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes after you eat to have your dessert, but I wouldn't wait longer than that because now your body, once everything starts to get out of your stomach into your small intestine, all of your hormones are, I'm not, well, the digestive hormones, right? So there's a number of them involved, and they start turning off your stomach motility and your gastric churn and your acid levels because now it's focusing on your small intestine, finish breaking it down with pancreatic enzymes and absorption. So your stomach isn't going to be very effective. And so your body is planning on the other end of that digestive process. So if now later you have that sudden dessert, you're starting all of the process up all over again. Often if it's a sugary dessert, you're spiking your blood sugar, then you're going to crash it right before bed. And that isn't a really great thing for your body to have to go through because if you crash right before bed, cortisol is going to get released. It's a stressor. It's going to get released to bring your blood sugar back up, and you're not going to sleep very well. So it all is a nasty cycle. So I would not wait to eat dessert very much later, as a late night snack at all. I keep everything close to my dinner, and after I'm done with it, I do not eat anymore until the next morning because I want my body to really focus on digesting the good meal that I had, right? Let's see how you guys doing over here. All right, we're good. I'm caught up. All right. So, setting yourself up for your success in your environment. Okay, so this is another aspect of it. You got the meal planning and the portion control. Um, Now it's your environment. If a food is easily accessible to you, you're going to eat it, whether it's healthy or not. Okay. So I typically put my snacks up on the top and the back of my pantry, and all of the ones that I want to go after first or eat first if I feel like I need something or want to eat something, I put at a level that I can more easily reach it. Now, again, I'm in a habit of saying, well, if I'm hungry for a snack, then I'm hungry. Or I don't eat. And that just has been over time. And because I used to emotionally eat, and I don't anymore, but on occasion it may still happen. But again, on occasion isn't going to make or break anything. It's what we do consistently that really matters. So I rearrange my pantry, clean out the things that are on your red list. The red list, what is that? Those are things that bring out the crave monster, okay? Maybe you get rid of them and you come up with a healthier and more nutrient dense alternative that doesn't drive that binging, like my homemade cottage cheese and ice cream. I think Stephanie is on here and I think she's made it. So, and if Steph, if you really like it, you can pop a thumbs up or something, let everybody know how easy it was to make. It's super easy. Or say Brad's Veggie Flats. Those are great crackers. They're filling, they're tough to overeat versus a saltine or a Ritz. And it's a nutrient dense option. It's going to give you fiber and protein, and it's going to give you things your brain wants. Um, Diane says, should you have your smoothie with your meal or hours later? If the smoothie is, it depends on what's in it, right? You got to look at how much sugar is in your smoothie, how much fiber is in your smoothie, how much protein is in your smoothie. A good smoothie is going to have low sugar, some fat, higher protein, and higher fiber. A lot of people make their smoothies a like practically a dessert frap, right? That is almost a whole other meal, and that's, I'd like to know, like, what time is that going to happen? Maybe you have, if you didn't have enough food at dinner and you need to get more in, maybe you make a smoothie and divide it amongst the two of you, and you have that with your meal, to help fill you up. The question is, do you need the smoothie? Um, or is that just extra eating, right? So are you hungry? So there's a lot that goes into that question. Um, your social environment. That's another one. Get your friends and family on board, because if, you know, if who you're hanging out with and how they eat, and if they're and if you've got kids in the house, or if you've got other people and they're not on the same page and they're bringing in things that you don't want to eat, but then that's right there, you guys can work on this collaboratively. So that's a whole other thing. But having the people near you on board and working with you, and being collaborative about it can be very, very helpful, especially if you tell them what you're trying to do and trying not to do. And then finally, on this part, don't let it come down to willpower. Planning is really a big deal. You shouldn't shop when you're hungry, right? If you do happen to shop when you're hungry, have something homemade trail mix in your bag, or a Stars and Honey or Only bar, or something that is a really good alternative or option to have to eat before you go in. Or if you don't have anything and you're in the store, say, I'm sticking to my list, and when I get home, I am going to eat XYZ. And imagine the thing that you're going to eat when you get home and rehearse that in your mind. And then if what you have done in the past is you hit the drive-through to grab something because you shopped when you were hungry, even though you were good at the store, rehearse that. Say, I'm not going to hit the drive-through when I get home. I'm going to take this other way and not go around it. Or I have a plan. I'm rehearsing it. I'm going to go home. I'm going to do this other thing. You know your weaknesses. So what you needed to understand is, what are they, and how can you shape your path to work around them, and how can you have your brain rehearse the thing ahead of time that you want to do. So why do we care about this? I alluded to it a little bit earlier when I talked about blood sugar spiking and crashing. Um, you know, we need to get into insulin a little bit, because that crash happens because of that hormone, the insulin hormone. If we Insulin is great. Okay, first of all, it is required. We need it for life, but it's also the hormone that's required for storing any energy in our fat cells. So if you're gaining weight and gaining fat, insulin's the one that's doing it. The functional guy, the one that's actually unlocking the door to the fat cell and putting in that energy, right? So if we overeat any amount of energy from fats or carbohydrates, if we're overeating it, then insulin is our guy to make sure that we store it for a rainy day when we don't have food. And when we eat foods that cause a large insulin spike, specifically sugars or refined carbs, especially those, we store more fat, and then we block fat burning, because insulin blocks fat burning. It's a storage molecule. It doesn't want it leaking out. It wants to store it. So it blocks our ability to burn fat, because in theory, if insulin's present, so is glucose, so is another source of energy. This leads to not only weight gain over time, but insulin resistance, fasting blood sugar levels that creep up into prediabetes and then diabetes range, and lots of inflammation and associated health problems. On the other hand, when we eat a meal that's balanced with protein and fiber and healthy fats, we are reducing that insulin spike, and we're able to keep our blood sugar stable. And this helps prevent cravings from popping up 2 hours later. When it's 1 or 2 hours later, that is caused by low blood sugar, because our brain is freaking out. So focus on meals. This is the last actionable tip. Focus on meals that support stable blood sugar. Aim for whole foods. Make your carbohydrates at the end of your meal lean towards the smart carbohydrates like sweet potato, whole rye bread, or whole grain sourdough, quinoa, ancient grains, North American wild rice, fermented soy products. Avoid those processed carbs, okay? So, what happens if it happens? Well, I did a post today and I gave you 5 tips in the comments of one of my posts about what to do when cravings hit. But one of them, check in with yourself. Right? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? You know, what's going on? Other signs it might be thirst or maybe a headache or dizziness, brain fog or fatigued. But if your pee is darker than light yellow, then you should drink some water. Do a mind body scan. Pause and check in with yourself. Are you stressed? Are you tired? Are you physically tense? Sometimes breathing, meditation, or a quick walk outside can actually just help you regain clarity and and calm yourself down so that you can make a decision regarding whether or not you're going to eat. So try that 5 minute mind and body scan. And now I'm going to wrap it up. So tonight we've learned that cravings aren't just about willpower. It's about how you've shaped your environment, what you did earlier in the day, understanding what your triggers are, whether they're physiological from sleep, stress, or the type of food you're eating, or if they're emotional. Um, but the good news is we can change those habits and work with our body's natural hunger signals. And as we get healthier and healthier, and we start making that insulin and blood sugar into a normal range, our body is a lot easier for us to understand and tell when we're hungry versus when we're not. It's a little tricky at first, so we've got to pay attention to all that stuff that I talked about. So I have 2 things for you. And in my upcoming 30-day challenge, we're going to dive deeper into how to master your hunger and cravings and start using up that stored fat and reducing your inflammation. So type challenge in the comments, whether you're live or replay, if you're interested, and I will make sure that you get the information when I am ready to take registrations for that. Second, I made a little guide with some information in the summary, as well as some recipes. So if you want that, comment kick, as in kick that craving, and I'll make sure you get that. So those are your 2 things for today. And I know I went a little over, but this is a big deal. These are so important. I'd love you to tell me in the chat, whether you're live or replay, after you've answered the 2 questions, if you're interested in the challenge or getting the little craving guide, kicking the craving guide, I want you to let me know what is the one thing that I mentioned today that you don't do now that you think is going to be really important for you moving forward. And commit to doing that one thing, not all the things. You might have written them all down, but I want you to practice one of them. I want you to put it into action. I want you to share with me what that is. Okay? All right, everybody. I'm going to be reading these comments, so put them in there, and I will talk to you later.